All right, so just to get us back on course here, so really the discussion tonight would be, do we want to proceed with the moving forward plating lot 58B, with the ultimate purpose being to possibly put that back on a ballot, to be undesignated and then possibly be transferred along with the other lots. If you're not going to do that, do you want to sell the other lots as is? Do you want to sell one of them or, keep part of them? I mean, the council has a lot of options, and that's the purpose of bringing it here for discussion tonight, so.
If this goes back on the ballot, can it be a separate vote or just for this one lot?
It potentially, and you've got a couple other here tonight where you could, consider those as well, but it's up to whoever carries the petition as to what lots.
In order for it to be a public auction, you'd have to get that be public, or otherwise who would want it but the people beside it?
So you've got to separate the process here, because the petition, if a petition does move forward, that is only to undesignated as parkland.
Correct.
Whatever happens after that is a future council decision. So the
Correct.
council could decide not to do anything with it. The council could decide to sell it.
Correct.
But that decision would come after.
Without that little piece there, the lot's basically worth,
Yeah,
get some value out of it, we'd want that piece included in there, I would think.
I know,
We'd want
Joe.
58B included in with 58 and 59, I would think, to make it sellable. Means we already own 80, 90% of it.
And Joe was looking, just rough numbers, not exact, but basically between South Harmon Drive and that point that cuts far into the lot there was about 70 feet. Joe, is that right?
Correct.
So if you're working with your setbacks there, you're only going to have about 4 feet that you could make. The front to back, you could only have about a hallway. So really, it's not feasible to probably ever build something on that lot unless you're including that 58B.
Are there any encroachments on it?
I don't believe so, Joe, or you?
I do believe there is one drainage that comes across into the middle of that lot, I believe, but it's like your typical culvert that just daylights into the ditch.
And it'd be similar to what we had on some of the other 7 lots that were up for sale.
How many signatures do they need on a petition?
Michelle, I think that was around 500.
It was just right under 500.
But it's like
I have
your
to get the
typical
exact
culvert
number, but
that
that's where it would be.
So someone needs to take out a petition, get that signed up, and then vote on it, just to sell that little piece, just so everyone in the audience understands.
Yep.
Basic terms.
That's correct.
Can you
And
hear me?
So even if we wanted to sell it, someone still has to go out and do all the work to get the petitions.
right, which is the same process that happened last year.
So,
And back to Dan's question, Jeff, sorry. But that's where you have to make a decision, or whoever's circulating the petition has to make a decision. Do you want to have to get 500 signatures 3 different times? Or do you want to do 500 signatures and include 3 lots on the same petition, or however many you're going to do? It's up to them to decide what gets included in a single petition.
I also think it's just important to clarify that, we've been asked, can the city just put this on the ballot? We can't. Somebody else has to take that petition and initiate that it gets put on the ballot.
so Justin, we got an election coming up in November. Can you kind of step through, or maybe this is Michelle, or maybe this is Stephanie, that maybe give a timetable of what actually has to happen if you're going to get it on the November ballot, just so everybody understands also. Once you get the 500 signatures, then when do you have to have them by? And, we've got absentee and early voting.
I did speak with the Davidson County Auditor, and we would have to have final ballot language to her by August 6th.
Okay, so Justin, what would have to happen then if we put just this lot or whatever lot we decide for August 6th? I mean, is it even feasible?
I think it'd be incredibly difficult to do that because you've got to have these, even if you're just talking about items 2, 3, and 4 on the agenda, you still have to go through the plating process for those. And I don't know that those would really be done with enough time to run through planning commission and council for approval. So if we're doing special meetings and
Do a lot of meetings.
SPN rushes the work, yeah, I mean, it's possible, but realistically, it's probably not feasible by that August.
So in all technical purposes, even though this is very good discussion and we need to eventually get some decisions made, in all reality, we're looking at a June vote, more than likely. Unless everything just lines up perfectly, which we all know that doesn't look like
I
that
think
fast.
you'd either be
At the
looking,
very earliest.
I think you'd be looking at either that or doing a special election, which is probably not as desirable either. Those obviously come with additional expense to the city.
Aren't we required to do the election within a certain time frame after receiving the petition?
Right, yep, so that would depend, that's true. That's
And
true.
there is not an election scheduled in June of next year for the city. No, so it wouldn't matter.
Is there one scheduled for the school, for school boards?
There should be a school election if someone.
If you got petitions taken
Yes.
out?
And then just to clarify, if the city receives a petition outside of an election schedule, we're required, just saying this because I wasn't on microphone before, we're required to have that election within a certain time frame. So we couldn't necessarily hold it till the next election if there wasn't one within, I think it's 60 days of receiving the petition. There's a stated time frame in state law.
Someone asked me a question. Does it have to be an auction?
No. I'll skip ahead past the election question for a second and go to the actual surplus and disposal of the property. If council was going to go that route and sell it off, you've got different options for being able to do that kind of a transfer. You can do it by auction like the last ones. You can do it by sealed bid, or you can list them with a broker. So there are several options that are available, and it would be up to council to decide which of those they wanted to do.
Michelle, remind me again, is it an election approximately $10,000?
Yes, we budget between $8,000 and $10,000 per election.
Just for everybody's knowledge too, it isn't cheap. But I guess if you're going to get enough for the lot, it might be still part of the expense of selling the lot. So I had another question, Justin. That plat that we were looking at, we are very confident that that is the existing survey, or I had someone that challenged me to say that that is not correct, but I'm not going to say one way or the other, but where did you actually get the actual boundaries of this lot?
I can defer to Joe on that, but SPN would have been the one to do the actual.
Yep, that plat that Stephanie showed earlier was prepared by SPN.
So then after the fact, it was just a mistake, obviously, that 58B was not included into the last election. Is that a true statement?
Well, I don't think that staff realized that, or didn't notice at the time, the functional problem we'd have with building on this lot. When those lots were identified last year, we basically had to go with lots that had existing legal descriptions. And this one, Lot 58B, did not exist at that time. It doesn't exist right now because it still needs to go through the platting process. But this is how it's being proposed based on, how it lines up with the shoreline and to square out that lot. So it's not that 58B was not inadvertently excluded last time. It's that we didn't realize that there needed to be a 58B.
And I don't want to take up too much of the time on this one. I guess you're in charge of this. I'm guessing most of these people in the audience are probably here for number 5, so I don't know if we want to handle this at a later time and just work forward, because we only have about 40 minutes left.
Well, I think. We'll just take them one as they go down the line here.
Okay.
I think for discussion purposes, that if you talk about what people's votes were, I feel like most people were under the impression that 58B would already be up there for sale or be like non-listed. And so I think the purpose of this is just to have a discussion, I think, about what like city council's opinion is on it. But it sounds like no matter what our opinion is, it still has to go to a circulated petition. So if somebody wanted to circulate another petition, I personally would sign for 58-B to be listed non-parkland designation to then later be sold.
And then just to clarify, in order for that to happen, the city would need to plat Lot 58B to give it a legal description, which staff can move forward with doing that if that's what you'd like us to do.
That's what I was going to say. It's safe to say we continue with the plat for sure, and then where it goes after that can be determined, because right now that piece of property is worthless without the other two. So.
I agree. Anything else on those, or you want to move on to the next one? Move on to number 3, discussion on lot 68A with existing encroachments.
All right, well, I won't go back through all the procedural stuff that we just talked about, and we'll just get right to the specifics on this lot. Stephanie, I think the GIS, if you want to scroll down just. Okay. So this one is a smaller lot next to an existing residence. The area that would be getting platted really would not be a buildable area. It's not really accessible to the public. You'd be, walking riprap to try to get out towards the point. And obviously there's a pool and some other improvements that were built over the property line. So this one would really be more of a cleanup situation than it would be anything else. But because we have those complications with it being parkland, that means that we still have to go through the process of defining it and sending it to an election for it to be able to be sold or transferred or anything like that. This one, even if you didn't end up selling it, if it were to go through the election and be undesignated as parks, that would then also open up the opportunity to do something like grant an easement for the pool or something like that, which we cannot do on parkland. So,
Justin, you know when this happened and how did this get to this stage?
that I don't know. I don't know the history. I don't know when the pool was built or anything like that, and we don't permit for any of that work.
Well, I talked to the owner, and it was about 10 years ago. And they were aware of that little area with the city employee that said, just go ahead and build it. You don't have to worry about it. I don't know who the employee was, but I know that I heard that's how it happened.
Yeah, and I don't think I'd be able to speak to that or be able to even say who it was that was doing the talking, but
there's no way we can figure out what the other, those other 7 lots sold for a price divided by a foot, and, figure the price out for that little piece there. It's no good to anybody else but the owner. It has to go to the vote, though.
and that's probably fair, but yeah, because this one is still technically considered parkland, it does have to go through the vote, and then we'd have to decide how to sell or transfer it at that point, which something like this, I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to auction this one in particular. You could do a sealed bid or list it with a broker. Those would both be options. I know that, I can't remember the dates off the top of my head, but you saw on the last lots, 58A, which was about that 10-foot strip on the north side of the lake. About 10 years ago, they did that for several lots around the lake to try to clean up some of these encroachment issues on a number of lots around the lake. For whatever reason, 58A was part of that process, but it never ended up actually being sold. So it was identified for that purpose to be transferred just like all the other ones were, but that sale never happened. This 68A would be a very similar situation to what happened with those. It's just that 68A did not exist back when all those other ones went through. There might not have even been a pool there at that time. I don't know.
Well, I think we want to do the same thing as we did with 58B. I guess move forward with the Planning Commission, and then if it takes a public vote, then someone's going to have to carry a petition.
My question is, and I'm not going to make any friends with this, but can you go back to that? Is what's stopping someone else from building a pool on any parkland and saying, whoops? I mean, I live across the street from that. And it sucks. It's a bummer of a deal that someone's going to have to pay for this and pay for this mistake. Our job as city leaders is to not make everyone in town pay for someone's mistake. That's my personal feeling. It's a terrible situation for someone to be in, but I just feel like we're bailing someone out.
What kind of liability do we have,
Told them to do it.
Justin?
I mean,
We now own another pool.
Justin, I'm assuming the pool would have to go through a building permit one day?
We do not do building permits for pools, no.
Yeah.
So I guess, Mike, if you're talking about the liability question, I don't know that it's a significant risk for us at this point. I mean, if we decide not to move forward with this, the likely outcome is going to be that we're probably going to have to require them to remove the pool.
This is Susan. Can I just ask you guys to speak into your microphones a little bit more, please?
But again, somebody would have to circulate that petition to get it onto a ballot. And so until that happens, are we just putting everything on hold until then?
That was the direction from the previous mayor, is, try to let it go through the process, see what the public has to say about it. In the meantime, we haven't, I guess, really discussed it a whole lot with the new mayor, but, really it's up to him and it's up to the council as to whether we want to require him to remove it or if we want to let it go through the process.
I guess my thought is if he wants to keep it his land, he should be the one that probably takes out the petition, gets everyone to put it on the ballot. If he truly wants to make this his land and be able to have the chance to buy it and then hopefully rectify that error. Are we going to allow people to speak? We got a guy with his hand up over there.
That's
Mr.
up to
McArdle.
council president.
Should we allow people to speak after we get through this whole thing? That way we can move it?
You're the president.
Okay, that's what I suggest.
Well, and as I brought up, and I don't know what the rest of you think, but I would say the first step is to get it through the planning commission and get that little sliver at least platted. And then what happens after that happens after that.
I'd say
Yeah, I
58A and 68A, get that plotted through the planning commission, those
And
two.
then it'll come back to council for either
Yeah.
approval or denial.
I'd say that'd be a good idea, for those two pieces anyway. We good on this discussion then?
What happens if it fails? And then people say, no, we don't want to sell that. What's that look like?
Yeah, I think at that point, really the only recourse is probably going to be to require the removal of any of the encroachments.
Who requires that?
Well, that'd be the city that requires that.
Who at the city?
Well, it's ultimately the mayor and council that make that decision, and as long as that's what they require, then it may take a court action, they may do it voluntarily.
Justin, is there any consideration for being grandfathered in? I mean, if it's been there for 10 years and nobody said a word, now all of a sudden, is there such a thing as being grandfathered?
No, I mean, in other situations, you may have something like adverse possession or an easement by prescription, something like that, but in South Dakota, those do not exist. You cannot have that against a government entity, so.
Someone just messaged me, what if someone gets hurt or drowns in that pool tomorrow? On that side?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's more of a risk for the property owner than it is for the city, but.
Public property is public property.
We are the properties.
That's fair. I mean,
Just checking. Someone messaged me. Okay.
All right. Anything else on this one? Discussion on lot 108A.
all right, so this would be another area that was identified next to the existing residential. This would be a little bit further southwest on that South Harmon Loop. Can't quite make out the street number there, but there's an existing, I guess you can say, parcel that the county has marked. It's not an official parcel, so the proposed plat that you see on this one would basically be taking that area that was identified, adding a little bit more area to the west to make it a little bit more of a buildable lot, and then running it through the process. So if you see on there, there's kind of a point where that lakeside line jogs just a little bit, catches a different angle. That would be the additional space that was being added there. This one, I know we were close to having some encroachment issues from the 107A lot, and they were maintaining quite a bit of the grass and ground to the west of their property.
Well, I don't see any reason why not to just run it through the same process, and if
Do all
anybody
three of
feels
them together.
compelled then to go from there, that'd be up to the public. But it's not going to hurt it to at least put it through it. If it remains parkland from there on, it's no harm, no foul. And we can have further discussion when it comes back to council if the planning commission will make a recommendation, and then it'll come back to council.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? Number 4 here, or 108A? We'll go to the number 5, discussion on plotting of additional lots at Lake Mitchell.
All right, so these are the ones that we figured there would be more public interest on. The other ones being, kind of infill lots and unique situations. We figured there may be less public, opposition to getting those situations sorted out. These ones are purely new lots. They're not near any existing residential areas. And Stephanie, there should be, which one do you want to pull up first? We've got.
I think it's important to point out that these were areas that were identified by the previous mayor as areas for us to look at. He wanted staff to look at areas that would fit the width required by the zoning regulations, so that's how these were determined. The first one I show in the packet would be the North Harmon lots. I did get some better pictures from SPN. The ones that we had before were really dark. They were hard to read. They're on your desk today. There's also some at the back of the room if anybody else would like to get some. I will put them on the agenda after tonight's meeting too, so people can see them. It was hard to see the lines on the other one. They were really dark.
I'll start on this. I'm just wondering what the purpose behind this is. If it's for money, I was under the impression when this vote passed for the lake project, we didn't need the money anymore because everything was figured out. So I'm just wondering what the purpose is.
Well, since I asked to get this put on for discussion, maybe I can make a whack at it, or we'll try, and then whoever else wants to hop in. But and I visited with somebody today of I thought the city didn't need it, and the response I gave to them is, when we've got several projects that lake or no lake or upstream or watershed or whatever the case may be, there's always projects. We have to cut millions of dollars out of our budget every year in order to make sure that we've got a balanced budget. And we do every single year, which I'm very proud of. But in the process, we do cancel and have to eliminate or postpone or whatever several projects that are in our city. Equipment, we've had to nix a lot of equipment, and other projects that are coming out of the general fund. So we don't have an unlimited source of funds. The city voted to said, yes, we want to move forward with the dredge. But as far as the lake is concerned, I think there's always several things that we can utilize the money for. Or if the council said, you know, in reality, why don't we take a look at the upstream or whatever the case may be. So we've got over 70% of our lake is public. And I guess, again, it's not going to be our decision if it gets voted in or not, but it's at least our direction to say, do you want to bring this to the public? And so that was my rationale behind it, right or wrong. And I don't know if anybody agrees or disagrees, and if I guess there isn't any form of discussion, I think we're probably done for the night.
How many of these lots, Justin, interfere with how many don't interfere with the bike path? I know the bike paths are a big issue on this.
Stephanie, can you pull up that bike path map, please?
While you're doing that, I want to add one real quick thing. We have sold a lot of land over the years. Some of them we didn't even know we owned. And just as an example, we're Make It My Designs in Northwestern. We sold those 2 lots to get them back on the tax roll. I think they've turned into some pretty nice areas that got developed. And there's a lot of other lots and land that we have sold over the years, and it's turned out, I think, to be a good sale for the city of Mitchell because we weren't utilizing the land. And second of all, now we've got it on the tax rolls.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to point out too, Jeff, is there's a lot of in-lots that we have sold over the years that obviously people aren't realizing that we take a look at any property. Does it fit the city? Should the city have it? And there's a lot of little green areas that we had out to like, why is the city owning this? And we ended up selling quite a few of those over the last few years, so, which has been beneficial for the community, so.
To answer Kevin's question, I know there are single track trails in both locations. I believe the northern portion has 2, and that southern portion has at least 1. There may be 2, but I do know on the southern portion that is one of the locations where we are proposing our 8-foot concrete trail as part of our jetty project. Not to say that those couldn't be incorporated with the lots, but to answer your question, that's what is in those locations.
I think if we could plan on doing this, we don't want to interfere with any of the bike trails or walking trails, you know, are used a lot by the public. I've had a lot of comment about that today, but I don't know what the rest of the council reaction is.
I would agree with you that I think that the bike path specifically, for me at least, is a free use activity, and I would certainly hate to limit those. Certainly if you get into, I'm looking out into the crowd and seeing some of the bikes, I know some of the bikes that the people own, they tell you it's definitely not a free use, that their bikes can kind of get expensive once you really get into the hobby. But I think overall, it's something that even if you just want to walk on a trail, there's some really nice trails up there. One thing I did speak to somebody about that I thought was interesting when you talk about plotting these lots, because that's what the topic is actually on. It's not on the sale, it's on the platting. It does give us some legal maneuverability with the land itself to be able to do some different, if we were doing adjacent project work, being able to provide a legal description to that work that is currently not able to be done because it's not plotted at all. It's just land with park. I don't know. That's a fair assessment, Joe?
Justin might be able to answer this better than I do, but around the lake, we had a lot of areas that are not right-of-way. It's just property owned by the city. So yeah, when you are trying to come up with legal descriptions or descriptions for where our utilities are or those types of things, it can become difficult. And the actual makeup of how that property is out there kind of runs all over the place, to be honest. We did sort out some of the north side of the lake when we were doing our daily drive lift station project. We needed to get some easements for that utility just because of how the lot lines are not uniform for where there are existing lot lines.
I'm going to jump in here. So there's someone in this room that told me that they were not in favor of the first sale of these lots because they think it would just be a slippery slope of just continuing to sell land around the lake and the bike path. And I feel like it's going that direction. I'm okay with having this. It does scare me because I do like the environment probably more than most people. I've been very critical about cutting trees around the lake, and this would just eliminate most of those things. One of the big things we've talked about is improving our watershed. This is directly attached watershed to our lake. That would absolutely be a negative impact on water quality directly. And when we talk about selling public land like Northwestern and Make It Mine, that's fine, but that wasn't really parkland. I had someone approach me that says, if we sell this, can I buy one of the baseball diamonds at Cadwell because I like playing baseball? 75% of the other baseball diamonds are still going to be able to be used. And that's not an unequal discussion and topic. There's a lot of guys in that crowd right now that put a lot of time and effort and years into these trails that I'm sure they don't want to see get taken away. I mean, I personally use them all the time. There's a reason I moved out to the lake. It's because I want to be on the water and on those trails. And I'm not afraid of having the discussion. If someone wants to go out and do a petition, that's America and freedom. But I would hate to see such a large, awesome group of people do such a large amount of work for everyone in our community that benefits not everyone in our community, but everyone that travels from here for this bike thing. I mean, I live by the lake and I see hundreds of bicyclists go by my house every single day. And I know they're hitting those trails. And again, I know this is just on the discussion of plotting those lots, but every step we take in that direction scares me.
And I guess we're talking much further down the road here, but even when there was the initial discussion about trying to find these areas, the previous mayor and staff were always aware of the trails that were going to be affected, and there have been discussions about how you can maintain some of that existing character, reserving easements if there is a sale, so that you can still, kind of preserve the purpose. But that's not something that, if we start down this path, that's not something that you have to have figured out right now. That's something that you'd figure out when you're doing the sale and deciding how do we want to preserve that access? What do we really want to maintain there? So.
I have a question. What is the purpose of platting all these lots unless you're hoping to sell them someday?
I mean, that would be the primary purpose, I think, at this point. But as Joe said, there are benefits to defining that area, and particularly the right-of-way itself, the North Harmon Drive, South Harmon, wherever that is around the lake. In a lot of instances, it's not clearly defined. So when it comes to other things like the utility projects and stuff like that, it does make things a little bit easier to have those existing definitions in place.
Through my campaign, I was all for selling lots to pay for upkeep and that wasn't shy about it, and I'm still not. But I just seen these lots that were proposed this last weekend, first time I've ever heard of it or seen that they were done. It was not being one of my top 10 choices, them three. There is areas, I'm sure we could work with the bikes, that I think are pretty good for housing. We got a campground, basically, let's say breaks even this year as far as selling frontage on the campground. There's one house to the south of it that built in the last couple of years, very, very nice. I'm not saying doing this, I'm saying check it out to see if it's feasible. The income on what the lots, if there's 43 here, when they're sold, what that does the property tax. I haven't heard that study yet. It's a great discussion. Can we relocate the campground to make it better? We're building a jetty. Would the campground be better down there? You got a beach, you got low area. You got, to my knowledge, there's no beach in the bottom of this. It's down the cliff at the campground now. And with doing no research, it's just my opinion. Naturally, I like the south side of the lake better. If you're a lake person, you know what the north side does with the dominant 12.5-mile wind out of the southeast. All this moss is going to go to the north side. So I think the lots would be worth more on the south side. There's some areas there that I met with a very avid biker today. I shouldn't say bikers, might be a wrong terminology, a person that rides bikes in the bike trails, and about which ones get used most, which ones they like. And first time I thought of it and done it, of checking it out. But I think we're totally foolish if we don't look at it. If the people vote it down, you go a different direction. It will give you money to spend upstream, and that has to get done one way or the other, more stuff, if we want to keep our lake from getting like it is now down the road. But we have to show income and make the lake upkeeps, in my opinion, down the road.
Any other discussion?
And I'll just say, Dan, I don't want to give the impression that staff is really advocating for or against any of these particular lots. All this was just prepared for the discussion for council to, make their own
All of a
decision.
sudden you open up your email and all of a sudden there are lots that are platted. We were not informed.
Justin,
Let me correct that. I was not informed.
Justin, you mentioned easement, and I was wondering about this myself, but I never did ask you. Can you maybe just expand a little bit? I'm not saying that we need to move forward or anything on this, but just for public knowledge, what would that even look like?
Yeah, Stephanie, do you want to let's scroll down a little bit, just because it's a little bit easier for me to make out. Keep going to the, yep, just a little bit further south, so if you take these ones for an example, it's how many there? 2, 4, 6, 7 lots in that area. There's existing trails that go through. When you're talking about an easement, what you could do is you could reserve an area towards the shore or up towards the road to be able to maintain the paths through there. Property owner would then be able to use the rest of the lot for their building, but you'd maintain that public right-of-way through there to be able to preserve that pathway for the public to use.
How would you ever build on lot 21 and preserve those bike paths?
Be a very nice hallway.
Yeah, it depends on, if you're going to be redoing that entire area, you could relocate the paths to the far sides of the lots. They're probably not going to be in their exact position that they are currently, but if you want to look at that option, you could find ways to make those trails pass through the lots, but still allow people to build there. Probably not in the way that they are situated right now, but you could potentially relocate them.
Justin, just as a point of clarification, for these, if we don't move forward with platting them, could a person still circulate a petition designating an area, or does it have to be platted in order for that to happen?
Just with the way that the boundaries would be, basically anywhere around the lake, I don't see how you're going to have a usable legal definition for property without having it platted.
I would think it'd have to be platted.
I'll just add one more thing. So again, I'm in real estate. I like development. I like living on the water. I like the lake. I love everything. But to me, and it depends, you could argue this 100 different ways, but should we sell every single lot? You'll basically directly benefit everyone, like 34 people that buy the houses. And we'll get some tax spin-off and all that other stuff. But the amount of people that are negatively impacted is 100x. And that's just my feeling. It's a nature guy.
I guess for me, I would also agree that you probably, platting these then creates another barrier for selling them, which I think I'm in favor of not selling them. And I think that one of the things to think about, or that I talked to somebody about, and I thought it was an interesting idea, was that it does allow the ability for a private entity to potentially offer some kind of recreational activity on the lake that's not city-owned if we did plat them. And that was the only thing that ever interested me at all, is that there could be some kind of shared use agreement or something in place to that effect that we currently could not do. However, I don't know that these lots are the right place. One of the things that I think would be good is if we looked at the whole lake and we keep talking about how much we want to have, or the percentages of lakeland that we own with shore frontages. And I think it'd behoove us to say to the Park and Rec Board, what would be an acceptable area, or is there areas that you could identify that you're not as thrilled about and or could be used to be plotted, to be sold at a later date and time for additional resources to be used on the lake or the lakefront in some capacity?
The other conversation I had with people is like doing like a 99-year lease, which we had discussed a little bit today, where we could find somewhere where everyone agrees on, we could put a restaurant there, sign a 99-year lease, we get to retain ownership, we could rent that out, lease it out, make just as much money in a lease payment for a restaurant payment, add amenity for everyone. The bicyclists could stop and get water, or Cliff Bar, or whatever, and everyone could have a place to go eat. And at that point, we make similar amount of money, we add an amenity, we get a restaurant, we don't lose parkland, and it benefits everyone, which is really what we are supposed to do as a government entity.
Would you be able to do that without platting it though?
And we could use a city liquor license, I think.
Camparoya.
So we
I
did
like
talk
it.
about this briefly earlier. A 99 lease could be possible. I think in the long run, it's still going to be more feasible if you plat the area, and ideally still undesignated as parkland. But the statutes are restrictive about what you can and cannot do on parkland. So you're going to have to be very careful in the way that you structured that lease to be able to make something like that work.
Which leads me back to the whole reason why we're doing this. If it's for money, then maybe we should solve for that particular portion. If we need money for whatever projects, I think that needs to be the target. That's why I started up opening with that, and I'd like to, I guess, these are my closing statements, I guess. But if we need a certain amount of money, because, I mean, that would be my goal, is to benefit the most amount of people without ruining our watershed and losing access for the trails. Again, if you guys want to go take out a petition and sell them all, there's literally nothing I can, or any of us can do. And that's the American way, so.
I think this has been great discussion tonight, and everybody had some input, and I think I like Dan's idea, I like Mike's idea, Jordan. I think this is just good for us the real reason that I wanted to put this on is to clean up at least a couple of the locations that, that we weren't really aware of. Now, we know that everybody wants to get up here and talk tonight. We know what you're going to say, so I'll say it for you. We don't want to hinder upon the existing bike paths that are out there. Let's just face it. I mean, it's something that the community likes. People like to come in from Mitchell and experience that. Now, is there other areas, as Dan said? I think maybe we can take some time and research, and is it the campground, or is it Camp Arroyo, or wherever the case may be, but let's just start with what we've got right now, would be my suggestion, and then maybe just keep an open mind on, wouldn't it be great if we had a restaurant out there? My Lord, that would be so cool. And so I think we've started at least to figure out what people want, what they don't want, and then that'll give council more of an opportunity to get input from our citizens too. I just think that that's obviously very important. And I talked to a few of you, and you received a lot of comments, and I did too. So that's kind of where I would like to leave it, unless somebody else has anything else to add to it, President. I don't know what else.
I think if people have ideas and suggestions, they should reach out to us and,
I
give
like
us their
that.
ideas and input of what they think should be or shouldn't be done. Instead of, let's turn it into a good thing instead of a fight like we had at the lake. Let's make good progress, and let's try to please everybody if we can.
Well, you have about 100 people here right now who would like to give you ideas and suggestions.
And we're down to about 4 minutes.
Yeah, there's another meeting in 4 minutes, so. Well, if someone wants to get up, we got 4 minutes, unless you're opposed to that, Mr. President.
And before you do that, I just want to clarify, it sounds like staff's direction is to move forward with the plating process on 58B, 68A, and 108A. Is that correct?
That's my feeling.
Correct.
Anybody
Thank you.
against it? Okay.
And to remind that we have public input on every single council meeting, and we have email addresses and so forth. Sorry we had to leave this to an hour, but we've got another meeting after this. But I think this is not the end, this is the start of discussion. And so when anybody wants to come in next Monday night, they're going to have 3 minutes to give us all their ideas, and all 100 can come if you want.
I had someone just message me, can we do a petition for this land to never be sold and never be talked about again? Hey.
I'd say probably.
Hey, I'm just asking the question.
That's basically what they tried 10 years ago, so.
Okay.
Oh, we got about 3 minutes if somebody wants to get up and do some talking.
Who wants to designate their talker? Okay.
I'll just go ahead and talk. So Stephen Larson here. I've been working with municipalities, city governments, public utilities for the last 18 years or so. And just a lot of this sits wrong with me. One, real estate, we're selling it when it's least valuable, when the lake is at its absolute worst. We haven't fixed it yet. Why are we selling anything? It is at its absolute worst value, which seems sketchy at best. One, and then the pool. There was a house over in Sioux Falls worth like $1 million or so that was like 2 feet over a property line. Is there any legal action being taken against them right now, or are they just getting away scot-free for being to laws and whatnot? No offense to the owner. I'm sure they were doing what they thought was best and what they were told, but at the same time, they broke the law. Yes? Yeah. Then next, selling lots is just a one-time income. The thing I learned working with public utilities is that you have to have the mindset that you're going to exist forever, because you should plan to exist forever. You will never get this land back at all. That's why we paid $1 million property for the Kelly, $1 million extra for the Kelly property out by the lake. We bought that for way more than it was valued at, because it was never going to go up for sale again in our lifetimes. To sell this land now is to exclude it from all of the future generations. Not my kids, not my grandkids, not my great-grandkids, everyone forever. This property that you cannot replace, you can get more flat land around the city. Lake property, there will never be more of. So it's just so short-sighted. There are other things to do for a one-time income. And to plat it, to not plat it makes it unsellable, basically, period. And really, the only benefit I was hearing, besides being able to sell it, was that it resolves a little bit of headache for maybe some projects that aren't even in the works right now. So there is no benefit other than to be able to sell this property. So, if anyone else, you have a couple seconds.
There's 2 minutes left.
Hi, I'm Joan Lubin. I agree with him. The only reason why you want to plat this is so you can sell it. And selling it is only a one-time source of income. You need money for the city, this is not it, okay? You need to find another way to find income that is consistently over the years, not just a one-time shot of selling off lake property.
Hey, you open the door now, everybody's going to come up. Tim Lubin, her better half. What attracts me to the lake is the nature, the naturalness of it. I have no interest in a lake that has houses all around it, docks, lights, businesses. So what you would call development, to me, hinders the lake. I have no attraction to a lake that's built up all the way around it.
That's our time.
Time's up. We're adjourned.
Sorry, we're adjourned.